Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. This is Sharon with Mad Paper Crush, and this is part 2 of making an idea junk journal from an old book. So I hope that you'll join me today as we work on getting the signatures sewn in and elastic put in for some of the signatures. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's talk about some of the tools and supplies and things that you're going to need for this part as we go. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on creating the holes for our spine so that we have a place to put our signatures. And to do that, I'm going to create a little bit of a template so I know where my holes will go on the spine, but then also I'll have a matching template to punch the holes in my signatures themselves. So I want to make sure the holes that I use in the spine are exactly the same distance apart on the signatures so that when I go to sew them together, everything will line up correctly. So I just got just a scrapbook piece of scrapbook paper. It's cardstock, so it's a little bit heavier to use. And this is really just going to be a guide. We're not gonna put this in here to use that for anything. If I was doing a hidden spine, I might want to use this, for something to put down in here. But really, I'm just going to be making a template with this piece of paper. And then I am either going to be using this tool, it's called a paper piercer, to punch my holes, or I may, depending on how it feels on this spine, I may end up using my crocodile. Now, I do have a big crocodile, and I might use that to punch some of the holes, but this is basically the tool. I'm going to be using this tool though, because this is the tool that I'm going to be using to create some of our eyelet holes for the elastic. So remember, I'm only going to sew 3 of these 5 signatures, and then the other 2 I'm just going to put into elastic so that if I want to add ideas where I need to take the pages out so that I can have access to put them in my sewing machine or, do something to them where I kind of need them free and not sewn in. That's what I'm going to do with those. So I want to have those ready to be able to do that as well. So I just have an old phone book that I use to, when I'm punching holes, that I can punch holes in without worrying about it. And then I also open it up for the middle to actually punch holes with my signatures. So we'll get to that. But if you have something like that that's soft that you can punch into, that's very helpful. And then I'm going to be using a ruler. I'm sure I'll be using my scissors or my cutting tool again as we go. I'll need a pencil, and I think that might be, and I have some binder clips. So as we're sewing a couple of the signatures, I'll have some binder clips. And then we had talked about in the first one to have some kind of string. So whatever string that you're using to bind it. And then I'm also going to be using my beeswax. And you can use whatever kind of needle you want. I'm just going to be using one of these bookbinding needles, but depending on what you have, you might be just as well suited to use like a yarn needle or something like that. So whatever you have, I think will be fine. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first I'm just going to create my template because I want to be sure that I have enough room on the back to do the eyelets. That's, going to be pretty important for me. So I want to be sure that I have enough room as I'm doing them to do the eyelets. So what I'm doing to create the template is I'm just putting the piece of paper, my scrap piece of paper, just kind of at the top of the book. It doesn't have to be exact, although you do want to be sure that you have enough room for your holes to go down so that when you punch your signatures, everything's lined up. So I'm just going to put my paper as close to the top as I can here. And then I'm just going to make a mark where the bottom is. So I'm not really measuring it. I'm just going to mark it and then cut it. So I'm hoping that when we do that, then I can just do another little mark to do the inside. So my template, I want to sit down inside of my book here. So I'm just gonna, once again, make a little mark where I think it's gonna go. And I'm going to cut that down, and then we'll see if I need to trim it down some more, but I want to be sure that this template goes right down inside, and then I have enough room to put my 5 holes for my 5 signatures. And that's pretty good. It is a little tight on the side here, so I don't know if I'm not, maybe this is not square. I have noticed that this trimmer, I think, might not be exactly square. So sometimes it doesn't want to, yeah, you can almost see, well, those lines are a little off, but let's see. I'm going to try to do this maybe at 1 7/8. And that, does that look pretty even? Yeah, it looks pretty even on that side. But you can definitely see when I trimmed that off, it wasn't quite straight. So I don't think that this trimmer, or it could have been that my paper was crooked to begin with. Okay, but that fits down in there pretty good. So I think this will work for us, because I just want a guide on where the sides are so that I don't get too close to the edge when I punch my holes. Okay, so now we have to do, well, you don't have to, but we're gonna do some math. Or if not, we're just going to kind of to judge things. So right now, all I'm doing is I'm taking the paper and just kind of putting it down on my pad here, my ruler pad, and I'm going to grab a little piece of washi tape to hold it down for me so that it doesn't move around as we're making our marks here. So now I am a little bit less than 2 inches across. And now remember, I have 5 signatures that we want to make. So the first signature that I always mark is the one right in the middle, because I know I want one that's going to be right in the middle. And I'm going to do that above and below. I'm going to mark my middle so I know where one signature will be. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because I have 1, now I need 4 more. So I need 2 on either side of that mark to finish off the signatures. Okay, so for my next 2 holes, I'm just going to try to split these pretty close, as long as I'm leaving myself a border on this side. So if I have my ruler lined up at my 2-inch mark, so I have the 9 here on one of the marks and my 11 on the other mark. So the paper is a little bit smaller than that, but if I would give myself a 1/4 of an inch as my border, so I can come in a 1/4 of an inch, and if that's my first mark, then I can split the difference here, and it's probably going to be, let's see, 1 2 3 4 5 6, so I can come in 1 2, so 3/8 of an inch. 1 2 3. Oop, I don't know if I did that one right. 1 2, yeah, there we go. Okay, so you can see my marks are pretty evenly spread out. And now I just have to do the same thing down below. So I'm going to line up my ruler on my 2-inch marks. I'm going to make a 1/4 of an inch in on either side as my first holes. And then we're going to come in 3/8 of an inch, 1 2 3, for the second hole. So now you can see I have my 5 lines for my 5 signatures. And now I'm just going to make this easy by drawing the lines down here so that I can see them when I do the cross lines. Because our next step is going to be to put in the holes for the signature. And now I especially for a journal this size, I would rather do a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. And if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know that that's kind of the stitch that I prefer to do. So I'm going to put my tape back down again, and we'll go ahead and start making our marks for my 5-hole pamphlet stitch. Now, when you do that, it's kind of the same technique. So I'm going to start by going down the middle. And now I think this is 8.5. And actually it probably would be helpful to put my ruler on here somewhere so that I know what I'm doing here. So let's line that up. And yep, we're at 8.5. So my middle mark would be 4.25, which of course is in between 2 of the lines on my on my mat here, but that's okay. We'll figure that out. And then you want to be sure you give yourself some leeway on the insides, top and bottom, so that your holes aren't too close to the top or to the bottom. And so I think what I'll do is I'm going to come in, usually I come in about 1/2 inch. I think on this one, I may come in to about 3/4 inch. So once again, it'll be halfway in between, and then we'll do the same thing over here. We'll come in 3/4 inch there. And then I'm going to line this up a little bit differently so that I can see where my middle of that is. So now I have my 3 holes, and now I just want to center one in between the 2 of these here. So I have 1, 2, 3.5 inches. So half of 3.5 is 1.5 plus 1/4. So it's what? 1.5 plus 1/4, 1 3/4. Is that right? 1, 2, 3.5. Yep. So 1.5, 1 1/4. So if I come down from my first mark, 1 3/4, to make my second one, that should be right in between those 2. And then same thing from the middle, 1 3/4. And there we have our cross marks. And now just very simply, I'm going to make lines going the other way so that I can tell where all of my holes need to go. And some of you, now you may be able to eyeball this or something. I just like kind of having, having it be measured out. So now for our template, we have where all of our holes are going to go. At each of these cross marks is where I'm going to punch a hole. So I'm just gonna make them a little bit bigger so that I can see them better. And actually, the other thing that we're going to need to do, and you can see I skipped a couple, because the 2 signatures on the inside are only going to be grommet, my eyelet signatures. So I'm just going to circle those real big so that I know the rest of this, I only want a hole at the top and the bottom here, and the top and the bottom here. These signatures will be sewn in with my 5-hole pamphlet stitch, and I'm just going to put my eyelets here for the elastic to go through on those. So I only need a hole up at the top and a hole down at the bottom to put that elastic through. And those holes actually will be bigger than the other holes that I'll be doing. So when we punch our holes, we really only want to punch them for the 5 signature ones first, and then we will do the eyelets after that. So now the other thing that I wanted to mention is I wanted to mark this as what I'm going to have as my top or bottom, because as I punch the holes on into the signature, just in case my measurements were a little bit off, I want to be sure that I am punching the holes in the signatures that I'm sewing right side up so that they will match, through the cover and into the signature. Okay, so let's go ahead and punch those holes. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put this in here. make sure it's centered. And I'm going to grab my paper piercer, and you could use an awl if you wanted to. So an awl, I'm just going to see if I could show you one, kind of looks like that. I like the paper piercer because it is a little bit finer. I don't get quite such a big hole, but you could certainly use an awl if you wanted to as well. Okay, so I'm just going to punch my first signature 5, my middle signature 5, and my last ones. Okay, now, actually, before I take that out, I'm going to flip this over carefully. Actually, let me grab one of my binder clips, and I'm going to just clip this down so that I can see. I want to take a look at the other side before I go any further here. So, just make sure my holes look pretty good in here, which they do. And so I'm just going to go back through them all to make sure that they're completely through, because I don't want to have any problems with them when I start sewing them in. Okay, now before I do the eyelets, I think it makes good sense to punch a small hole where those eyelets are going so that I can see it when I'm ready to punch it through. So now I have my 5 holes at the top and 5 holes at the bottom and 3 holes everywhere else where we're going to sew. All right, so now we can punch our eyelets, whoops, and put them in. So I'm going to remove my template now, but we're going to keep this because we're going to use this to put the holes in our signatures. And I'm going to go grab my crocodile. Okay, got the crocodile, and I am going to use my 3/8 or 3/16, I guess this is called, hole punch to make holes. And I could, since this is just at the top and the bottom, I probably could just use my small one. It does the same thing, just a little bit differently. But I think I'm going to use the big one to punch the holes and the little ones to set the eyelets. Now I'm going to use these gold eyelets because I think that it will match the lettering on this really nicely. So let's go ahead and punch those holes. Now I'm going to do it on this side because it's harder to see where the holes are in the fabric. So to use this crocodile, what you do is you start by setting this at what size you want your hole. So there's a 1/8 hole and a 3/16 hole. And because I'm using the 3/16 eyelet, I need to set it on the 3/16 setting. And when I do that and press it down, you can see the fat 3/16 hole punch comes down, and that's what I'm going to be using. So now I'm just going to line up underneath that big 3/16 inch punch. Let's move this stuff out of the way. I always have way too much going on my desk. Okay, I'm going to line that up, and then I'm going to go down slowly so I can see where it's going to go in. And I'm just going to create one hole there. And then I'm going to skip one of the holes and create my second hole. So you can see now I have 2 big holes next to the little ones. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Let me make sure I'm starting on the right one. 1, 2. And all I'm doing is I'm trying to line up when the punch comes down with that little hole that we made with the paper piercer. And that worked worked really nicely. And now let's go ahead and set our eyelets so that that's all in and ready to go. And I think I'm going to use this one to do that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my eyelet and pop it in the hole that I made. And then I need to be sure my little one, and the big crocodile does this as well. This is just a little more easy for me to manage than trying to put this in with the big tool. So I'm going to set this. There are settings for a 3/16 eyelet. So it has a bigger nub coming off there and a wider press on the other side. So what I'm going to do is, you can see the little tooth that comes down on this side. This is going to go in the top of the eyelet, and then this kind of mountain there, just this little bump, is going to go on the bottom of the eyelet and spread it out for us. So you can see I have the eyelet in there, and it's coming through the back of the fabric here. Whoops, and it just fell out. So I'm just going to put that in there again. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my crocodile, and I'm going to make sure that the top tooth goes through that top eyelet, and just give it a little, I like to be a little gentle. I don't want to crimp it too hard, at least at first. And then you can see how it turns the ends of the eyelet over and creates a bond there. So I think that worked out perfectly. So now I'm just going to do the other ones. Same trick. Put my eyelet through. Make sure my top tooth goes in the top of the eyelet. Ooh. Ooh, I say it's easier for me to handle, but it doesn't want to. I have to be careful. Okay. And then give it a gentle squeeze. And there we go, 2 done. I'm going to go ahead and do the other 2 up at the top. All right, so now that part is done, and we'll be able to thread our elastic through there, and then we can have some signatures that are easy to remove so that we can add ideas to them as we need to. All right, so now let's go ahead, let's put our cover aside for just a second. And now what we're going to do is we're going to punch the holes in our signature. So I'm going back to the spine template that I had made. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, actually, maybe what I'll do is I'll use my embossing here, my score tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up just this middle line on one of the scoring marks so that I can fold this in half and have it be right on that line. So now all I need to do is I need to punch the same holes, the 5 holes that are in this, in 3 of my signatures. Now we had put them together and I kind of had decided on the order I wanted them. So the 3 that I'm going to be using are the first, the front, the middle, and the back. So the 2 here that are in between those 3, I don't need to punch holes into. So I'm going to take those and put them out of the way. Now, the other thing that I like to do when I am punching my holes is to use these binder clips to hold everything in place. So I am going to probably use 2 per signature just to make sure the papers don't move around. And actually, before you do that, you should go through your signature, just kind of flip through and make sure everything's where you want it to be. So for example, if I wanted this book page down this low, I could leave it there, or I could move it up a little bit so that it's a little more centered in the page. So you want to be sure all of your papers are right where you want them before you start to punch. Okay, so, and I'm putting my binder clip on one side and the other side because we're going to punch right through the middle. And I'm going to show you how I do that for one, and then I'll go ahead and do the other one. So I'm using my old phone book here again, and I'm going to be using my paper piercing tool again. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I have this the right side up the way that I want it, and I'm going to make sure I have my top at the top. And then I'm going to hold my template in there, and I'm just going to go and punch through my 5 holes that are already in my template. And through the spine. Now, some people will do all of their signatures at one time. I honestly haven't had a lot of luck doing that. So I don't know, if I'm doing something wrong or what, but I like to do one signature at a time. If you are comfortable doing them all at one time, I would encourage you to do that because it'll take you less time than me. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the other signatures as well, and I'll be right back. Okay, I punched all my holes in my signatures, and I still have my binder clips on them. I'm going to put them aside for just a minute because I want to go ahead and put my elastic in. Now I have this, I don't even know if it tells me what size it is. I don't think it does. But I think it's like 1 millimeter in width or diameter. It's pretty small, but I couldn't find anything thicker. And so I'm going to use it for now. But the great thing about doing elastic in this book is that I can always change it out if I want to later. So let me see if I can figure out how to get the end out of here in a way that doesn't totally mess it up. Oh. Okay, there we go. Okay, this already has a little knot in it, so I'm going to try to take that out. All I'm going to do is do 2 sections. So you want it to be at least twice the size of the distance between the holes. So let me try that again. So that was 1, this is 2, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra to leave for tying. And then what I'm going to do is I want the back to look nice, the outside. So I'm going to do my tying on the inside. And I don't want it to be too tight, but I do want it to be fairly secure. So I'm going to see if I can do this with one hand. And I'm just going to give that a little, I dropped all my elastic on the ground. Okay. So I didn't need quite that much, but you can see I have a nice elastic piece on the outside there that will look nice with the rest of my stitches when we get to that point. So I'm going to do one more. And I am really making a mess of this elastic. Okay, let's try this again. 1, 2, a little extra. Let's see if I can not waste quite so much this time. Okay. And let's give this one a tie. Okay, and the other thing I like about doing this, I think I might have mentioned it, is that I can change this out later if I find a different elastic. Like I said, I would kind of like to have a little bit bigger elastic to go through here, but that's all I got. So now I'm just going to show you what this looks like when we put these signatures in. So this signature, I don't have any stitching in or anything, and then I can just slide it right in there, and it will be held in by the elastic so that when I want to pull it out and add something to it, a new idea or some inspiration that I have, I can just pop it right out, or I can even just pull one of the pages out if I would need it to do that. So let me just make sure that's going over the edge. They're all lined up there. And there we have it. So those two are in. And now we can sew our other 3 in. So I am going to take these back out to sew the other 3 in. But I just wanted to show you what that looks like.